Hello class. Today I would like to show you how to use locators in Selenium. As I said in class, the hardest or the most challenging part of automation is how to use your locators to get things done. And I told you guys this what I'm giving you here in your class notes is the most commonly used locators. But you have to decide how to mix them and how to use them. But before you can use them, you need to know them. So I'm going to show you how to use each and every single one of them in a quick exercise. Okay, so I'll get my Firefox started. So I have my Firefox open, and in there I have the website that we'll be doing all our testing in, and I have my Facebook open. Also, I have my Firebug also open. So I'll click on Firebug and that should be open. There we go. So the first locator I would like to talk about is the ID locator. And what is the syntax of this? This is essentially ID and the ID of the GUI element. Okay, so how do we use that? A quick example is let's go on Facebook and I'm going to try to tell Selenium to find something on Facebook using the ID of the field. Okay, so let me open my Selenium. I'm going to change my base URL to facebook.com, and because this is manual, I'm going to start typing. Okay, so as always, we know the first command is open and the target is always a backslash. So I'm telling Selenium to go open my base URL. The next command is type, and now I want to find a target. So for example, I want to type in Ty Ali as my email address. So to do that, I want to use the ID tag, okay? So I'll click on Firebug, the locator, and say, show me the name of this field. So click on it. Once you click on it, on the bottom of the screen, you'll see the I call this, the HTML name of that field. And as you can see, the ID we're looking for is email. So all I have to do now is go into my Selenium and say type ID equals, I copy this most of the time, so just double click, copy, and paste into your Selenium. So that's my target. And the value is, I can say Ty Ali at gmail.com. Now, when I run this, you should see my email address in here. So let's run it. So there's only one test case, so I'll click on this to run. And as you can see, Ty Ali was populated. Okay, so that's how you use the ID tag, and I believe I showed this to you in class. So let's move on. The next one on the list I'd like to show you guys is the name tag. Okay, how do we use the name tag? The name tag is also very similar to the ID tag. And in fact, most GUI elements have an ID and also have a name. But don't expect this to be the case all the time. So a quick example, let's go back to our Facebook example. As you can see in that Facebook for email, I have an ID called email, but I also have a name called email. So if I was to change my Selenium code from ID as a tag to name as a tag, it should still work. So let me delete this and let me run this line. I'm just going to run this particular line. So if I press this and I say execute this command, as you can see, the name also works. But sometimes you find the name is there, the ID is not there. And let me show you a quick example. So in the Mercury Tours, I want to type something in here. If I press the locator and I say show me the ID or the backend name for this guy, and I click on it, as you can see, I have a, let me bring it up a little bit. I have a name, which is username, but there's no ID. So in this example, I expect you all to use the name. Okay, so let's move on. The next one I'd like to show you is the name and filters. Okay, what does that mean? So for this, I'm going to sign in into the Mercury Tours. I believe the username is tutorial and the password is tutorial. And I'm going to sign in. Now, when you do your automation testing, some elements have the same name. For example, oops, I see this, I'm just going to press cancel for now. Now, this has to do with the Java problem I was telling you about. We can say cancel, make it disappear. Okay. Now, if I was to put my locator around this checkbox and I click on it, you can see here the name of the checkbox is trip type. Now, if I was to select the next checkbox, which is this guy over here, and I click on my locator and also go there, as you can see, the name is also trip type, because essentially in the back end they have the same name, because the customer can only choose one. So in this example, when you use only name, Selenium doesn't know what to do, because you have one or more fields that have the same name. So if this is the case, we use what we call a filter. And what is a filter? So let's go back into the syntax in your class notes, and you can see the name, which is the name, then there's a value, right? So example is name, which is trip type, and the value. So the value is your filter. So let me show you that quickly. Let's go back into the Mercury Tours. The name is trip type, which is the same name as the one above here, but their values is different. So the value here is round trip, while the value here is one way. So it's very, very simple. To use this in Selenium, all I have to do is type in, let's get a new line. I can say a new, okay, so I'll say click, because I'm not typing now, I'm clicking, click. I can say name equals, always copy so you don't make a mistake, double click to copy, bring it back to Selenium, name equals this, and now space, value equals, let's copy the one-way value, copy, value equals one way. Now watch, let me select round trip, then I'm going to run that line. So if I was to run this line and I say execute this command, as you can see, the one way was selected. If I change the value, and let me go back to the round trip. Where's the round trip? Copy this value, and I paste that in here, and I say execute this command. Watch here on this side of the screen. You will see the one way, the round trip will get checked. So let me click on here and say execute. As you can see, the round trip was checked. Okay? Alright, so that's how we use the name plus filters. Okay? So make sure you remember that, and whenever you need to use it, always bring it out and use it. Okay. Now, the next one I want to show you is what we call link. What is a link? A link is essentially a link to another page or another website on a page. Okay, so a good example here is this. If I was to click on profile, I have to tell Selenium that this thing is clicking on is actually a link to another page. Okay, and how do we do that? We do that by telling Selenium we use this link, sorry, this syntax. Link is equal to the name of the link. Okay, So let me show you a quick example. I'll bring my Firebug and tell my Firebug to tell me this guy. Tell me about this guy. As you can see, links always have this ahref. This means link in HTML. So what we're looking for is the name of the link, profile. So that's the name of the link. So what I'll simply do is in my Selenium, I will come in here and say click, and I will say link equals copy the name of the link, which is profile, and I'll bring that in here, and that's my command. Now let's see this happen. So I will right click and execute this command, and as you can see, the profile was selected. Okay, so this is how you select links when you're doing automation testing. All right, and then there there are many websites that have links. You have to tell Selenium what you're clicking on is a link. All right, let's move on. Now the next ones I would like to show you, they are essentially combinations of the first four I described, and they are used because sometimes websites are not straightforward, meaning things are either a link or things are either a name and filter or an ID. It's just a little bit complicated, and once you see that, then you might want to try what we call the tag. Okay, the tag uses CSS. Don't worry about that for now, but just understand this is another way of finding element on the page. So let's play with the first one. The first one is tag plus ID, and I'm gonna go back. All right, the password here probably has an ID. So if I go locator and I press this, now my ID name is pass. And yes, you can just use the ID right away, but sometimes that might not work. So you might want to use your CSS tag. And what you do is this: you go into your and you type in CSS equals. So you go into your Selenium and type in, create a new command, and the command is type. Okay, so I want to type in a password into my Facebook, and the target is now CSS equals um, input hashtag. So this is the syntax. CSS equals the tag, the hashtag, and the ID. Let me show you what the tag is. So go back into your Facebook. The tag is the first word in that name. Okay, so in this password, the input is the tag because that's like the grandfather, so to speak. So the tag here is input. So I'm going to tell Selenium the tag, which is I just typed it in, CSS equals input. Then I'll use the hash key and the ID. So what is the ID? The ID here is pass. Okay, so I'll say pass. All right, and the value, I can give it a value, maybe say ABC, 1, 2, 3. Now watch this. When I run this script, Selenium will go in here and put in a password. So I'll press this, execute. See? I mean, I know some of you are already asking, this is so much complicated. Why don't we just use the name or the ID right away? Which is yes. So you can actually create a new, type, which is so much easier. And you just say, hey, ID equals pass, and the value is ABC123. This would also do the same thing, right? If I run this and I press execute, as you can see, it found it. But sometimes this might not work. Okay, so you might have to use the CSS tag to make it work. All right, so let's move on. So please practice all this, play with it, and memorize them. Okay, so CSS tag is whenever you want to combine the tag and the ID. Now the next one is when we combine the tag and the class. Okay, so let me show you what that means. A tag and a class. What is a class? So we know what a tag is. a tag is the first thing you see on the name, which is input. Now, what is a class? So let's go back into that Facebook example. And as you can see in here, the class is input text. That's the name of the class. And why do we use this, guys? We use this when you have an element that doesn't have an ID and doesn't have a name, but it has a tag and it has a class. So let's try this out. So still on the password, I will say type, okay? And my syntax is always CSS equals the name of the tag. The tag is input. So I will say input. Now, this is no longer the hash. This is a dot. And the name of the class. So let's go back into my syntaxes, and it says tag dot class. So what's the name of the class? Go back into your Facebook. The class name is input text. So I'll copy this, put it into my Selenium, and type in input text. Okay? Now give it a value. ABC123. This should also find, let me run this. You should also find the password field. So when I press run, execute this command, and I say execute. Alright, so I'm going to run this, and I'll say, so let's remove everything in here and execute this, and I will say execute this command. As you can see, it put the ABC123 on the email field instead of the password field. And why is that? That's because the email and the password both share the same class. I believe this is the email and this is the password. They have the same class and they have the same tag. So as you can see, this is not really a perfect solution, but the way we get around that is we also use other things, which I'll show you later on. But know this, and this could be sometimes useful to you. Okay, so let's move on. The next one is the tag plus attributes. Okay, so now, how does that work? In the last example, I showed you how to use tag plus class, and you saw that the password and the username had the same class. Now, this is where we might try something different. So let's try this out. This is saying that the CSS equals the tag name and the attribute value. What's an attribute value? Go back into your Facebook and I'll show you what an attribute value is. An attribute value is something that is not an ID, that is not a class, and is not a name. So in this case, the attribute value here could be a tab index, or it could be a type. The type is password. Okay? I'm going to use tab index as my attribute value, and this problem should be fixed. Let's try it out. Open up your class notes. Let's get the syntax from there, and open up Selenium. And in my Selenium, I'm going to create a new line, and I will say type CSS. Now be careful because the command is different. Input, then there's a square bracket, and it says attributes equals value. So let's go get the attribute name. So go back into my Facebook, and the attribute name is tab index. So I'm going to copy tab index, go back into my Selenium, and put that in there. Then I think the value, and the value is number 2. Number 2 in there. Now, if I was to run this, oh yeah, and give it a value. So value is ABC 1, 2, 3. If I was to run this, the password should now appear in the right spot. Okay, so right click and say execute. As you can see, my password is in there. So, as you can see, they are very similar. They all do the same thing. But sometimes you might have a field that only has, it doesn't even have an ID, it doesn't have a class, it doesn't have a name, but hey, it has an attribute, right? That could be a tab index or a type, and that could literally help you find, the element you're looking for on the page. Okay, so let's move on. The next one I'd like to show you is the tag plus class plus attribute. So it's essentially a combination of these two. Okay, so I'm not going to waste time with that, and I'll just use the same example I used above. I will use the password example on Facebook. So I will say type, which is the command, and my target is CSS equals the tag name, which is input, okay, the class name, which is input text, right, and my attribute, which is tab index, equals the value of the attribute 2, and now I'll give it a value ABC 1 2 3. And if I was to run this, let's go SERPs, that's the wrong place. Let's go back into the Facebook and remove the password in there. And if I was to run this with Selenium, I'll tell Selenium to run this for me, I should get a value in the password right there. Okay? So these are different tricks you can use and pick and choose when you're doing your automation testing. Next one I would like to show you is what we call the inner text. So what does this really mean? Sometimes you might want to click on something inside, a sentence. Say for example, I want to click on this guy here, this from fields. It could be something I want to click on in my test, but it's actually embedded, inside, a long text message. So how do you do that? And there's several ways of doing this. You can either record it, or if you want to do it manually, I'll show you how to do that manually. All right, let's get started. So the command we're going to use is the CSS equals tag contains and the name of the text that you want to type or you want to do something on. Okay, so it's very straightforward. Let's go into our Selenium of the website. Open up your Firebug and tell your Firebug, okay, I want to click on this guy. Then we'll find it, and it tells you the tag is called span. So I'll go into my Selenium. I'll click on a new command. Let's delete this. Click on the new command, and the command is type. Okay, and it says we know the CSS equals the name of the tag is span. Okay, and let's go back into the class notes. It says your tag, then colon, contains, and the name of the inner text. Okay, so we're gonna put colon, we're gonna say contains, and the inner text that it is we're trying to click on. In our case, go back into Facebook, we want to click on, we can just copy this, okay? From friends, say friends, just copy that. Okay, put that in Selenium, and you close it off, and if you run this command, you might not see exactly, but you can see that it actually passed. So Selenium basically found this text and went in there. So that's the end of the video. I hope you guys have enough to get your assignment going. I expect some lab times and some questions. If not, we'll carry on Saturday. Thank you.